Welcome to another edition of Anti Moonboy News. I'm your host, Xenu. And yeah, we got a good one for you today. We're going to be taking a look at some new regulations passing in the government, at least the United States government. We'll be talking about quantum computing and Bitcoin, and some Monero updates as usual. But first, we got some super chats to take a look at. We received 5 donations this week, 4 of them air horn worthy, which is awesome. First one is was a private donation for 0.01 XMR, and he said basically that he likes the show and for me to keep up the good work. So thank you. Next we got from XMR fan. He donates 0.10543798 XMR. Thank you, XMR fan. He says, as XMR fan, I'm more curious about Liquid Network than Lightning. Chain analysis probers assign dirty scores to Bitcoins, but Liquid cleans Bitcoin, then they treat all Bitcoin as fungible and no compliance threshold triggers. Those are both in quotes. According to the sideswap.io/guides. What are your thoughts on this? Yeah, my thoughts on this is that Liquid Network also sucks. I actually don't even know. I thought it was part of the Lightning Network ecosystem, but I mean, I don't really care about classifications or anything. So with Liquid Network, what you're doing is you're trusting custodial services to handle your Bitcoin, which is just a bad idea. And you know, with these custodial services, if they get regulated, like it's meaningless privacy for you, right? It's kind of like the argument that people make that Venmo is private because, you know, regular people can't see your Venmo transactions if you make them private. And it's like, yeah, technically that's true, but like, then you think about, you know, governments or advertising agencies that are getting all your data, they see that, right? And yeah, it's not a safe way to transact with peace of mind necessarily. So I'm looking actually at the Blockstream FAQ, and it asks, one of the questions is, who can see transaction data? It says, only the parties involved in a transaction, as well as users with the blinding key of a transaction, can see the asset type and amount transacted. Nobody else is able to see those details. Not even Liquid members or functionaries are able to break the cryptography of Liquid's confidential transactions. So the way it works, at least I understand the pegging part of it. So like you can take Bitcoin and then peg it into Liquid, and then it's like 1 for 1 basically. Or you can just get Liquid directly, I believe, which is I think how most people do it because you can just get it from exchanges. Then it says revealing transaction data. While certain transaction details are hidden from third parties, either user participating in a transaction has the option to share a blinding key with one or more third parties. Any third party with access to a user's blinding key is able to see the details of all incoming and outgoing transactions to that user's Liquid address. As a result, Liquid users can transact confidently while maintaining the ability to share details of their transaction with third parties, for example, an auditor or regulator. That pretty much says it all. You know, the reason that Liquid exists is because it will 100% comply, okay? Here's a little red pill for you if you want to understand the current attack on peer-to-peer privacy. If your option for using cryptocurrency isn't being removed from KYC exchanges, then the feds believe they can compromise it. Or worse, they already have compromised it. And, you know, with something like Liquid, you have this service that's like totally custodial, and you're relying on a third party to like facilitate the trades and to peg it and all that. And on top of that, it is very liable to be regulated. You know, the second they get like subpoenaed, they're going to like immediately like turn over all the metadata they have on you. Yeah, I mean, in general with Lightning Network, like the long-term issue with it is that it is becoming more and more centralized over these custodial services. And this is something that we're witnessing directly based on, wallet downloads and how people report their usage of it. It's becoming more and more centralized, and exchanges are adopting it more. And the problem is, if you see an exchange adopting it, it's totally cucked, okay? It's not going to be like good. So the actual people who support Lightning Network for the correct reasons are few and far between. And a lot of that just has to do with the fact that the infrastructure for it is just not that great. So it's really doomed to fail long term. I've been considering that one thing I could do is make a series doing like a deep dive on Lightning Network and why I don't like it. And I'll then do a guide of like in the series, like running my own node correctly and seeing if I can even do it. I mean, I'm sure I could figure it out. I'm relatively good at Linux and stuff. But like, I don't even think it's like worth it necessarily, just because like I'm very just black-pilled on it. Like I don't see how Lightning Network is either one, not going to be completely regulated from top to bottom, or two, that people are going to move long term to be more decentralized and move away from proprietary services, which is exactly what's happening. The trends all show that it's becoming worse and worse over time. And like also too, like I just think like using Lightning Network is kind of pointless when you can just be private on Bitcoin's base layer. And like I think that's what people should be focusing on, and on was it CVT and CSTS? I'm doing that off the top of my head. I think that's what it is. There's these new pushes for these opcodes that probably would make some sort of decentralized coin join protocol much easier and things like that. I think that's really what should be focused on. This liquid stuff is just, I don't trust it at all. In addition to many of these other Lightning Network services that are really just Venmo 2.0. And it's not something I would trust at all. And if you want to know the secret, the reason that we aren't seeing these services attacked more is because no one's using them, and the feds aren't just wasting time on it, right? If people were adopting Lightning Network, you better believe that the hammer of justice would swiftly rain down upon all of these services. They would all receive letters telling them that they're going to be breaking the law as being money transmitters, or exactly what we saw with Samurai Wallet. And yeah, all these services will get shut down. So they're going to comply and they're going to regulate. And it is, in my opinion, that all of this is just going to be a Trojan horse for a fully KYC type of solution that LARP says privacy preserving, like Venmo. And that's my thoughts on that. But thank you for that donation. That was very kind of you, XMR fan. Next up, we got a donation from Z Ping Ping. He donates 0.216 08643 XMR. That gets an air horn. Thank you very much, Z. He says, "Go get him, Anti Moonboy. Love your channel. Let's go." Well, thank you very much for that generous donation and that compliment. I appreciate that. Yeah, man, it's funny. I've this past week I was like posting in the on Matrix. There's this XMR community channel. And like I'm like getting recognized on there now. People are like, "Oh, I love your content. I didn't know you post in here," like stuff like that. That's actually happened on more than one occasion now, which is kind of hilarious. I'm becoming an e-celeb, which is kind of weird. But this is really filling a niche. People are just sick and tired of people who are just talking about price all the time. Observing cryptocurrency from a technical level, I think, is really the way forward. Look at YouTube and how much content there is that is like very good content about Linux. It's unbelievable how much there is. Like Mental Outlaw, Luke Smith. There's this guy Denchi I really like. So many like just great guides out there that have never made Linux easier. From a crypto technical perspective, though, on the Bitcoin front, there does seem to be like a good amount of content. But like for Monero, I feel like we could have more. You know what I mean? And especially content that isn't just like talking about price all the time. I really dislike that. And also distancing ourselves away from this concept of a privacy coin. You know, I feel like a lot of content out there is kind of just bringing everybody to the table, which is fine. You can do that, and there's an audience for that as well. I'm more of the opinion that curated content is superior, where somebody who is an expert kind of like only gives you stuff that they think is interesting. And so that's kind of what I'm trying to do here, where I'm kind of just like filtering out the crap and giving you what's real. So that's why most of the content I have is about Monero. But yeah, I also talk about Bitcoin. And I probably will end up making Bitcoin content in the future as well. But that's going to be a lot more critical. I'm sure you guys will, just because like Bitcoin just sucks in comparison to Monero these days. And I've received DMs telling me to make Bitcoin content, so I might end up having to do that just because there's demand for that. So, anyways, thank you very much, Ping, for that donation. All right, next up we got Corrupt Carl Force, SR case, Silk Road case, right? Carl Force, he was the guy. He was the dirty cop, right? I'm pretty sure that's the case. Yeah, it is. Okay, he donates 0.1239280 air horn. Thank you. He says, practice OPSEC with peer-to-peer exchanges. Operation Dark Gold. Vendor Gold traded cash and mail for Bitcoin for years until feds caught him. Continued running his business undercover, leading to 35 arrests. Could have been fed up from the start. No arrest info on Gold. Disappeared. Thank you very much for that donation, and you bring up a great point. And, you know, when I give advice about not using KYC, that is definitely a simplification. You know, when you're talking about privacy and giving advice about privacy, it's very difficult because there's so much nuance to this. And depending on your level of OPSEC, the game changes completely. I try to be as thorough as possible. But when I do say don't use KYC, that doesn't mean that like you can dox yourself in other ways while using a non-KYC sort of platform. Now, the Operation Dark Gold case, I have heard of this before. Basically, there was this guy, I think he was on the darknet. I don't think he was on like local Bitcoins or anything. I think he was on the darknet, and he basically offered cash for dirty Bitcoin, and it was just a Fed operation. So I think it was a Fed op from the start, to be honest. I might be wrong about that though. It's kind of difficult to find information on it. Now, interestingly enough, one person who actually fell under this was Sam Bent, who he makes a ton of content under the channel name Doing Fed Time. He actually was somewhat implicated as a part of this, where he did send dirty Bitcoin to an undercover, and that person then sent them cash, but it was probably law enforcement, right? So kind of I didn't even know that until I looked it up in preparation to answer this question. So that's pretty funny. But yeah, they ran this operation for, I think, a month, probably a little longer. But yeah, the feds ran this operation kind of a while ago. And I think this was probably before the time of chain analysis really becoming mainstream. And so I think my assumption is people were like doxing themselves by sending their Bitcoin to this person, and then they were probably using similar wallets attached to selling narcotics. But yeah, they arrested like 40 different dealers who sold drugs, amongst other things as well. And it focused on, it looks like darknet markets like from quite a while ago, from like 2014 to like around that era. And it does seem like there's always kind of like a lag with these arrests where federal agents are kind of building their case and then kind of going after people. But because we are seeing that kind of transition to more Monero usage, I imagine it's becoming a lot harder for these federal investigators. And, if you want a case for Monero to go back to be listed on KYC exchanges, here's where it's at, right? Because, with timing analysis, with poison outputs, and the amount analysis as well, and IP addresses, and user agents, things like that, you can effectively tie someone to a transaction of Monero with decent probabilities. Is it a silver bullet? No, but it doesn't really matter. The parallel construction is the thing, right? And if they just get a lead, they can go after you. This, by the way, is not a Monero-only issue. It would affect every cryptocurrency. Of course, there are unique things about Monero. But anyways, yeah, that's a good comment there. Thank you for pointing that out. Let's move on to the last one here. It's from xmr.bar. He donates 0.148 42668 XMR. Air horn. I just got a big button next to me. Big orange button. Love slamming that thing down. Phrasing. Okay. This comment says from xmr.bar, provably fair gaming at xmr.bar. Your bets transaction hash plus block hash equals dice rolls. No tricks, just crypto math. Test it yourself at xmr.bar and see how we ensure fairness. Always verify, never trust. All right, they donated again, so I'm going to do another. I'm going to gamble again. Let me try to send this. Yeah, so last week it was funny because I had this advertisement for this service, and then there was like another Monero gambling service that was released, and they had like an exploit, which kind of sucks. But these guys were pretty cool when I used it last week. For what it's worth, I'm only taking donations. I'm not like doing some, ad campaign or anything. And what's cool about the site, though, is it's very minimalist. And it seems like the person behind it does seem pretty cool on Twitter, at least. They post like privacy content and stuff. But yeah, I'm not going to be gambling a lot anyway. So we're going to gamble, let's see, 0.01 Monero. And I'm going to send that now. And we'll see what ends up happening. And it looks like I lost. So, fortunately, yet again, lost everything. But thank you to xmr.bar for that donation. I think maybe in the future I'll tell a story about the time I went to Reno. I'm not going to do that in this episode. I think I got an hour's worth of content, but in the future, I have this wild story about this time where I kind of just said, screw it, let's go to Reno. And I went there for like 3 days. It was a whole adventure. It's not even all about gambling, too. There's like other stuff that happened. But, okay, cool. Well, thank you very much. And that is it for the Super Chats. As always, if you'd like to donate, you can go to xmrchat.com/Xenu. And that is that. So, before we get to some news, give some channel updates. Not really much to say. Website's working. I have noticed that occasionally someone will tell me the website's down. So I don't know what's up with that. Because for me, it's always worked. But if you do see the website go down, let me know. And keeping an eye out. I'm keeping an eye on that. I might have to contact the people who are running the server to fix that. This week, actually it was yesterday, I uploaded the churning video. It's a very beginner-friendly guide of churning. It's basically a review, but it kind of falls in line with the whole OSSpeed thing. And I think that came out really well. So if you're interested in learning about churning, that should be helping you out a lot. Darknet market maximalism. I should actually finish the first draft like this week. And then I'm going to be kind of going through and, picking it apart. Basically going to be reviewing that and making sure it's not complete crap. You know what I mean? It's probably going to take me like 3 drafts to get through, but I'm still planning on that April release date, probably late April. So hopefully that does happen. Now, regarding the podcast, I'm not going to be recording the screen anymore because I believe that is making the upload times for these videos like way longer. Like last week, it took me like 3 hours to upload this thing. So I'm probably just going to be recording the episode. I will still be doing screenshots though, but I may even stop doing that just because like, are people even watching these videos? You know what I mean? So I may end up just like moving to like, MP3 only basically. And I don't even think anyone would really care, right? Now I haven't moved this on any podcast services yet. I'm probably not going to get to that this week either, but next week I'll probably get to that. So we shall see. And nothing really much else to talk about. So yeah, let's now get to the news. All right, start things off. We had a story of a man. We have a story of a man who fell for the boating accident meme. The story goes, a man was held in contempt in federal court for refusing to surrender 119.65 Bitcoin that was subject to a seizure order. He has to pay $10,000 for each day he does not comply. The FBI found the defendant's laptop and noticed ledger software on it last year. The court issued a seizure warrant for the Bitcoin held in the address on January 31st, 2025. However, instead of transferring Bitcoin to the government, the court documents found that the suspect transferred Bitcoin to other wallets. And in fact, it says here that while defense counsel enjoyed the weekend with family, suspect expeditiously transferred all the Bitcoin from the wallet identified in the seizure warrant to various accounts on the blockchain. Less than 2 hours after the phone conversation between defense counsel and Ozza Gottfried, Reynoso, the suspect, moved the subject's assets to another Bitcoin wallet. With intuition more accurate than the oracle at Delphi, Reynoso, the suspect, again transferred the subject assets to a third Bitcoin wallet on February 1st, 2025, just after midnight. He then sent the subject assets to a fourth and fifth Bitcoin wallet. These frenzied transfers occurred within the 24-hour time frame to comply with the seizure warrant. The majority of people who use Bitcoin have no idea how chain analysis works. Still. Like, it's so far behind. I think it's kind of funny, like, when this whole OSPI thing happened, I actually made a post on Dread, on the Monero Dread forum. It's totally legal to post on Dread, by the way. You just can't post about illegal stuff. I'm just talking about Monero. That's all I'm doing. I'm just talking about Monero. And so I made this post talking about what OSPI means for Monero and if you should be concerned. And it was a great post. You know how many people responded to it? A single person. And he was just like, oh, interesting. Yeah, guess we shouldn't use KYC. That was it. Like, we are such a small group when it comes to the totality of cryptocurrency. Us privacy advocates and open source software advocates, we're minuscule compared to how many other people are out there. And it's interesting to have some perspective because when you go and you talk to the average person who learns about Bitcoin, they're just keeping that Bitcoin on an exchange, or in this case, they're transferring it directly off a centralized exchange to a single wallet, and they think that is good enough. The fact that this person did not immediately coin join his Bitcoin shows that he has absolutely no idea what he was doing. And the thing is, the overwhelming majority of Bitcoin users are doing this. And they're told to do this because they're told by the quote-unquote experts that this is the correct thing to do when, all they're doing is doing a single hop. And they think they're anonymous. Yeah, I'm not really sure how much longer this narrative is going to exist that Bitcoin has privacy built into it. Like, I would imagine it's already been shifting, right? I think this isn't really a dogfight that the Bitcoin maximalists are having anymore. I think most of them have kind of just accepted that, okay, we can't win this battle. Let's just do store of value, right? But the thing is, if we're being honest here, this boating accident kind of thing happening where someone thinks they're being anonymous hasn't really been happening as much as I would think it would be happening, right? I would have expected this to be happening a lot more. But we haven't really seen a lot of that. And I think the reason for that is, well, twofold. One, we're not hearing about the cases where people are actually smart about using their Bitcoin, which does happen. And two, I think that like chain analysis in general is kind of pointless because these people are holding their Bitcoin on an exchange, or they're actually aware enough knowing that, you know, chain analysis is watching them and they just don't care. You know, they're like, yeah, that's fine that the government knows how much assets I have. No problem. And they just go along with it. So it's funny, like, you know, I have this channel and I'm so militantly against this. But then I have to like be honest and say, you know what, the majority of people, they just don't care. And it's just kind of silly. What's funny though is when you argue with somebody who does care and then they bring up boating accidents with Bitcoin, it's like, listen, dude, do you actually know how to avoid, you know, blockchain surveillance? And they probably don't. And I'll be honest with you, right now my Bitcoin power level is pretty low because like I was just tailing what Samurai Wallet was doing. Now basically all their recommendations I was basically following because those guys knew what they were talking about. With them gone, I would just say use Monero because I don't trust anything over there right now. You know? The real pieces of garbage, those are the guys you want to follow. You want to follow the dirtbags. Because they're dirtbags because they filter out the lames. Okay? You need to be a dirtbag if you want to be a cypherpunk. Okay, you don't need to be. But that element to it I've found is a good indicator that someone's passionate. And anyways, it's just no surprise to me that once Samurai Wallet went away, there wasn't really any alternative to, you know, waiting in the wings. I do have to look into that Ashigaru, is it? I have to do more research on that. I've heard some okay things about it. But, you know, there's a lot of pressure with that. Anyway, I'm getting off topic here, but back to this story though, like, yeah, this person, they thought they could pull a fast one, and absolutely they could not. And rather funny, they got caught, you know, trying to tamper with the evidence. I don't even know what crime he committed for what it's worth. This could just be like a divorce rape kind of situation. Or maybe he was, you know, a drug dealer, or maybe money laundering. But yeah, he got caught. I will say though, like a lot of people with Monero, they still just use centralized exchanges. And obviously you're way better off than someone just using Bitcoin. But I think people are lulled into a false sense of security because of that. Because the thing is, if you are buying large quantities of Monero and the value of Monero goes up, and suddenly you're living a lavish lifestyle, you better be careful. Because I can imagine some people won't be paying their taxes, and the government notices that. You know, the IRS, they'll get you. Right? So anyways, it was kind of funny. I feel like I would like to poll like attendees at a Bitcoin conference about how to use Bitcoin privately. And I can just only imagine. It's either going to be them giving you terrible advice, or them just saying, oh, I don't know. Or a third option, them saying Bitcoin's not really great for privacy. And I think that narrative is actually growing. So funnily enough, yeah, maybe this type of seizure won't be as common in the future, just because people have kind of figured out that, yeah, the store of value is really the main thing I'm using it for. Why would I be moving it around? I'm just going to keep it on an exchange or right next to an exchange and, you know, a ledger. Well, not literally next to it, but you know what I mean. And I really think that is really what people are just doing now, because why risk it? This is your future investment, and this is the narrative that they've chosen. So, why would you use it? And therefore, you're just going to keep it, in the wallet where you can just transfer directly back to the exchange. All right, so we got a couple regulation stories to talk about. The first one is the IRS broker rule that would have negatively impacted DeFi. It has been turned down. Looks like every Republican voted in favor of turning it down, and a decent amount of the Democrats, 76 out of, I can't do math. Well, 76 voted to turn it down, and 131 voted against it. So that's not that bad. And this is a big story because this broker rule was pretty asinine. Essentially what it did is it said that any type of software dealing with like cryptocurrency, they would have to be they would be categorized as a broker, and they would have to get KYC information from anyone using their software, which is insane, right? This is like the people writing these laws have absolutely no idea how any of this works, because that is so stupid. So anyway, I found this write-up, and there's a couple paragraphs here I'm going to read that really this is a mic drop. So this is what it says. This IRS rule is not merely burdensome. It is inappropriate from a privacy and civil liberties standpoint. The rule does not simply impose costly compliance burdens on developers and infrastructure providers. It directs them to fundamentally change the nature of their activities from the interpersonal publication of software and maintenance of infrastructure to the highly personal collection of individual user data. Compliance here is not just difficult or technologically unfeasible, it is fundamentally inappropriate. It may be reasonable to ask certain persons engaged in customer-facing businesses to know their customers. It may be reasonable to ask persons who routinely collect private information about their customers to make that information available for lawful criminal and civil investigations. It is not, however, reasonable to ask persons who have no customers to treat the mere users of their software tools as if they were their customers, to collect their private information and report it to the government without a warrant. In the context of software developers, that is similar to asking a novelist to treat her readers as customers and collect and report their intimate, personal details to the state. In the context of non-custodial infrastructure providers, that is similar to asking the telephone company to record and report the phone calls that travel over their wires. Compliance here is not just difficult or technologically unfeasible, it's fundamentally inappropriate in a free and open society. So anyways, that pretty much sums it up as well as anyone could have. The law was absolutely retarded. But I guess it's par for the course. So anyway, they shot it down. And that's a net positive. I'm holding my breath, though, because while this is good news, we now have two other stories to cover of bad regulation stuff. And like this is kind of my issue with anybody or anyone saying that like the Trump administration right now is very pro crypto. I think they're very active in crypto. It seems like they're very pro big business. They're very pro stablecoins. And with civil liberties, they want to eliminate friction with this broker rule, but they also don't really care about personal freedom and privacy, or at least they claim to, but I think we know what that claim actually means once we view their actions. All right, let's move on. The next story reads, Trump Treasury expands financial surveillance. More than 1 million Americans are about to face a new level of financial surveillance. The Department of Treasury's Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, Fincen, announced that the threshold for currency transaction reports has been lowered from $10,000 to $200 for Americans living in 30 zip codes in California and Texas. So basically, to battle the cartels, they are lowering the threshold of financial transactions to monitor, which is freaking asinine. Because I'm pretty sure $200, that being the threshold, that's like how much a Big Mac costs these days. Inflation is so freaking out of control. And it's been at $10,000 for a long time now. If anything, that needs to go up. But of course, they were lowering it. And honestly, this is probably just a test run to eventually apply it everywhere. As usual, they use the cartels or the terrorists or, whatever to have a reason for these, draconian laws and regulations. And then they go after the privacy advocate, the regular law-abiding citizen, because they just want to collect information about you. So, when we get a win, with like the broker rule, all right, that's cool. Then we get one of these, and it's like, ugh, like this is what they actually want. They want to control the information even more, or at least their access to that information. Now I got an article here from The Rage. Shout out to Lola Leitz. She's always doing great stories, guys. I highly recommend getting on the RSS feed on here. Anyways, this article is interesting. So basically, back in November of last year, there was this guy who went on Joe Rogan, and he talked about debanking. Debanking is a really bad issue, right? Where people basically lose access to their bank and like all their financial services, and they're not even told why, because the banks aren't allowed to tell them why. And it's pushing people to maybe learn about cryptocurrency is what a lot of people, and like I agree with that, right? Having freedom to financially move your assets, that's a really, really powerful concept, right? So anyway, the Republicans, they kind of ran on this issue of like, we want to stop debanking. And they promised some reform to it. But what they've done instead is they've gone after this independent group, which for the most part is made to protect consumers like us. So it's called the CFPB. It's a what does it stand for? I forgot what it stands for. But basically, they have they're who you go to if you want to like file a complaint against like Coinbase or Venmo for like doing, bad things, either maybe they like closed your account due to chain analysis, or with Venmo, maybe they flagged your transactions for being over a certain amount or something. They're going after those people. And what the Republicans have done is they've essentially remove that debanking oversight. So like, instead of like helping out like the law-abiding citizen, they're getting rid of the like oversight on the people who are debanking, which doesn't really make any sense. Essentially, this is helping out big tech. It's not necessarily helping out banks like financial institution banks, but it's also not helping out us. It's only helping out big tech, right? So interesting stuff that they actually went ahead and passed this. It is like a net positive for these like major crypto groups. And this is the result, guys. I mean, like after that last election, what really went under the radar is how much lobbying was going on. And we're seeing that. Trump tweeting about Ripple and Cardano. Okay? Trump backing stablecoins, or it's CBDCs really, it's quote unquote stablecoins, right? And now it's something like this: Trump backing us getting rid of an oversight group, a watchdog group that goes after big tech. Really, what they're doing is they're lobbying the shit out of these Republicans to do all this, because these boomers have no idea what's going on. So anyway, and this is best summarized here. It says, with an enormous amount of access to political capital, the tech industry could have chosen to use the viral debanking conversation toward reforming the Bank Secrecy Act, saving hundreds of millions of U.S. Americans from unwarranted dragnet surveillance, while at the same time saving banks billions in compliance costs. Because the thing is, banks have to spend like millions and billions of dollars to analyze transactions and stuff. So instead they just say, okay, we're just going to debank the person instead of going through with that. It goes on. Instead, big petty tech chose to get rid of the only agency representing consumers, save itself from enforcement action against its questionable practices, without any effect on the expansion of citizen freedoms and liberties at all. So there you go. All right, we got a few more before we get to some Monero stuff. First one I got here, a man was robbed of over $300,000 in cash after a crypto trade. And this happened in Hong Kong. A man was robbed of over $300,000 late Thursday after he had completed a cryptocurrency trade. Police received a report from 40-year-old Wong at around 11 p.m. that he was assaulted by a man with a wooden stick and was robbed of a plastic bag carrying some $318,000 in cash. Officers later responded to the scene and canvassed the surrounding area for the assailant. No arrest has been made. The man suffered injuries to his left hand and refused to be hospitalized after receiving basic treatment on site. The only thing I'll say, and it's not funny that someone got attacked, but it's funny that he was attacked with a wooden stick. Who does that? What type of stick was it? Who attacks someone with a wooden stick? That is audacious, man. But yeah, I mean, if you're going to do a cryptocurrency trade, I mean, doing very large amounts is one thing. Well, I guess this was in Hong Kong, right? So maybe it isn't. I don't know their conversion rate, but whatever. Don't do it at 11 p.m. in some random part of the city. Okay, do it middle of the day at like a Walmart. All right? Don't do this. Whatever this guy was doing. All right, next story. The administrator of Garantex was arrested in India at the request of U.S. authorities. Garantex is a Russian cryptocurrency exchange, and they've been sanctioned by the European Union and the United States government. And so this guy was in India. He is a Russian national, and he was extradited. He was a Lithuanian. I don't know if this is related to the Bybit hack. It is interesting timing, but they got one for sure. And I'm waiting for them to get one of these operators of these non-KYC swap sites. We haven't seen that yet. But instead, they got this. I've never even heard of this exchange before. Garantex. But anyways, he's been arrested. Probably going to do a lot of time. And lastly, Peter Schiff talked about Monero again. He's quietly turning into one of the biggest proponents of Monero, which is kind of hilarious. Well, I don't really think he's a supporter, but he is he understands crypto surprisingly well. And, he's saying Bitcoin, people don't use it. People think it's anonymous. It's not. But Monero is pretty good at that. I don't like Monero, but I understand that it has better features than Bitcoin. And it's he gets it. I don't think he's going to go much further than that, but who the hell knows at this point? Right? Maybe he's going to be headlining MoneroCon 2026. But just it was actually a good 10-minute discussion where Peter Schiff sounded entirely reasonable during it. So interesting stuff. Let's get to some Monero news. The first thing, the Monero Research Lab had a weekly meeting on Wednesday, and I talked this time. Last time I pussied out. No, it's a friendly time, and I put forward that timeline is crucial here, and it seems pretty unanimous. Most of the developers do not want to focus any more time on ring signatures. And they think it'd be a better idea to go to full chain membership proofs. So that seems to be what is happening going forward. But I said my piece. I said my piece. And they were like, no, you're stupid, Zeno. No, they didn't say that. Cuprate has released their very first usable node. It is not meant for actual use. It's for testing, okay? And I haven't run it yet, but I'm seeing a lot of people talking about it on Twitter. I guess it's very fast. So it's really cool to see that we have a node that's a new node that's written in a different language. This is in Rust, and it seems to work really well. Speeds are improving. So you love to see it. And lastly, Shop&Bit posted their February payment stats. Monero users absolutely crushed relative to the other cryptocurrencies. 67.9% of the transaction volume was in Monero. 30.4% in Bitcoin. And Lightning was at 1.3%. Craziness. The people have spoken. Free market has spoken, guys. You know, you guys can live in your fantasy land of a second layer Bitcoin. But the people are speaking right now. And, you know, it's funny, like a lot of these sites like Shop&Bit and CoinCards, they have Bitcoin branding, but like, no, it's actually Monero being used. You know? I guess Shop&Bit is a catchier title, though. I'll give them that. All right, wrapping things up. Interesting article I found by Mr. Jameson Lopp. He's one of the Bitcoin thinkers out there. And there's a pretty interesting article here about quantum recovery. So here's the debate. It's a fascinating debate, actually, because like I'm actually kind of split on this myself. But you're gonna have quantum computers slowly improving over time, and the problem is there's a lot of dormant Bitcoin addresses, and the problem with quantum computing is people who have quantum computers can go to those addresses and steal the Bitcoin, essentially mine the Bitcoin. And so there's many different angles to this, but there's two sides essentially. The one side is allowing this to happen. And just saying, you know what, this is a free market situation. The person who makes the quantum computer that does it, they deserve that Bitcoin. And this also supports kind of like Bitcoin protocol being hands off and just letting people do what they want to do. On the other side, though, people are arguing that any dormant address that doesn't switch to a new quantum address loses access to their Bitcoin. Now, this is obviously extreme, but it would prevent the quantum people from stealing the Bitcoin. But then those people who actually have access to the Bitcoin, they're also screwed. I'm more on the side of kind of letting things play out. But it actually is a really moral dilemma here, right? You know, what should you do about this? And, you know, if someone were to actually, like tomorrow, hack into, you know, one of these addresses, you know, it would be absolute chaos. But that's kind of the thing with quantum computing. A lot of this is like long-term, or at least it seems like we'll get an idea before it actually plays out. But then you have some people who argue that maybe a nation state already has it. Right? Because if you have a quantum computer, you're not going to show your hand immediately, right? You're gonna keep your cards close to your chest. So it's crazy, right? I'm of the opinion that we should continue slowly improving. And what's nice about Monero is we will have forward secrecy. I do not know how bad quantum computing will be for Monero relative to Bitcoin. It would be disastrous either way, right? You know, if quantum computing does come out tomorrow, like everything changes. But you know, I've noticed that encryption on, you know, many different platforms is already migrating over. So that's good. And I think we're going to be all right. I think over time things are going to slowly be migrating. And with Bitcoin, though, because the addresses are on the public ledger, we can see them. And that does change things, right? Yeah, I don't know how quantum recovery would work with Monero. I guess like if you have access to like a database of Monero addresses, you can like mine those with a quantum computer and work backwards and get the private key, right? So even though you can't see addresses on the Monero blockchain, you could actually get addresses that way, right? I think that's how it would work. So Monero is just as susceptible. So I guess, I'm not really as split as other people. In my opinion, you should kind of just let things happen. I think I'm in that camp. Maybe all of this is a moot point and we won't see quantum computers for another 100 years. It's hard to predict these things. But anyways, we're at the end of the episode. Thanks you guys for listening. If you would like to participate in the Superchats, xmr.chat.com/Xenu is where you want to go. You can also donate directly to my personal address. Cheers, guys.